The legend of the Ghoul, a dark journey through history. The Ghoul is a demon-like being or monstrous humanoid originating in pre-Islamic Arabian religion, associated with graveyards and consuming human flesh. In modern fiction, the term has often been used for certain kinds of undead creatures. First used in English literature in 1786, in William Beckford's novel, Vathek. Habitual traits: drinks blood, eating the dead, grave digging, preys on children, seduces humans, shape-shifts, steals coins. The concept of the Ghoul has long fascinated and terrified humanity. This creature of the night, often associated with graveyards and death, has roots in pre-Islamic Arabian religion and mythology. The term Ghoul itself is derived from the Arabic Ghoul, which translates to demon or killer. It is believed that ghouls were first mentioned in 1001 Nights, a collection of Middle Eastern folk tales. Ghouls are typically described as monstrous, shape-shifting creatures that feed on human corpses. They are said to dwell in graveyards, deserts, and other uninhabited places. Their appearance varies across different cultural depictions, but they are generally portrayed as having a grotesque humanoid form with sharp claws and fangs. In Arabic folklore, ghouls are notorious for their ability to change shape, often taking the form of an animal, usually a hyena. This association with hyenas is likely due to these animals' tendency to dig up and consume human corpses. Ghouls are also known to lure unwary travelers into the desert, where they attack and devour them. The legend of the Ghoul spread beyond the Arabian Peninsula, making its way into Turkish, Persian, and even Western mythology. In some Turkish tales, ghouls are referred to as hortlak, a type of vampire-like creature that feeds on the blood and flesh of the living. Similarly, in Persian folklore, ghouls are called ghoul, and they are said to haunt graveyards and consume the dead. In Western literature, ghouls have been popularized by authors such as H.P. Lovecraft, who included them in several of his horror stories. Lovecraft's ghouls were described as rubbery, dog-like creatures that dwelt in underground tunnels and catacombs, and fed on corpses. This depiction has influenced many modern interpretations of the Ghoul in popular culture, including movies, television shows, and video games. Despite their widespread presence in mythology and popular culture, there is no scientific evidence to support the existence of ghouls. However, the enduring fascination with these creatures speaks to our deep-seated fears of death, the unknown, and the darker aspects of human nature. In conclusion, the Ghoul remains a haunting figure in the annals of human imagination. From its origins in ancient Arabian mythology to its modern incarnations in popular culture, the Ghoul continues to captivate and terrify us. As we continue to explore the depths of our own fears and the mysteries of the world around us, the legend of the Ghoul will undoubtedly endure. Further history and legend of the Ghoul. The concept of the Ghoul, a creature that haunts the fringes of human imagination, feasting on the dead and lurking in shadows, has a rich tapestry woven through various cultures and eras. This essay explores the historical origins, cultural interpretations, and modern-day perceptions of the Ghoul, aiming to provide an in-depth study into this centuries-old creature. Origins in Arabian mythology. The term Ghoul or Ghoul in Arabic mythology is derived from the pre-Islamic folklore of the Arabian Peninsula. The Ghoul, described in the tales of 1001 Nights, also known as Arabian Nights, is a demon or monster that dwells in desolate places like graveyards or deserts. It is known for its shape-shifting abilities, often appearing human to lure travelers into danger, only to devour them or feed on their corpses. One of the earliest references to ghouls can be found in the stories of Sinbad the Sailor, where ghouls are depicted as terrifying entities that eat human flesh. Islamic influence and medieval texts. With the spread of Islam, the Ghoul found its way into Islamic folklore, where it was further mythologized. Islamic texts like the Kitab al-Bulhan include illustrations and narratives of ghouls, often portraying them as supernatural beings that could be controlled or summoned through magic. Medieval Islamic scholars debated the nature of ghouls, some classifying them as jinn or spirits created from smokeless fire, while others saw them purely as a product of human imagination or folklore. European and Western interpretations. As tales from the Middle East traveled to Europe via the Crusades and trade routes, the ghoul was adapted into Western folklore. However, in European contexts, the ghoul often merged with other undead creatures like zombies or vampires, sharing attributes like a hunger for human flesh or an association with death. By the 19th century, with the rise of Gothic literature, the ghoul became a staple in horror narratives. Authors like Edgar Allan Poe and H.P. Lovecraft incorporated elements reminiscent of ghouls into their works, albeit with different names and nuances. Cultural variations across the globe. Beyond the Middle Eastern and European perspectives, the concept of ghouls or similar entities exists in various forms globally. 1. African mythology. In regions of Africa, there are tales of spirits or creatures akin to ghouls, such as the Ads in Ghana, which can transform into a firefly to attract and prey on humans. 2. Indian subcontinent. Similar to the ghoul, there are creatures like the Vetala in Hindu mythology, which are spirits that inhabit corpses. 3. East Asia. In Japanese folklore, the Gaki or Preta are spirits doomed to eat human waste or corpses due to their sins in previous lives, sharing thematic elements with ghouls. Modern representations. In contemporary culture, the ghoul has been revitalized through various media. In literature, modern horror writers have revisited the ghoul, giving it new life in novels, where it can represent societal fears or moral decay. In film and television, from the classic horror films like the 1975 British film, The Ghoul, starring Peter Cushing and John Hurt, to recent series like Tokyo Ghoul, the ghoul has been depicted with modern twists, often as a metaphor for alienation, or the struggle between human and beast within. In video games, like Fallout, have introduced ghouls as mutant humans, expanding the concept into a post-apocalyptic narrative. In pop culture, the ghoul has become a symbol in popular culture for anything grotesque or macabre, often used in Halloween decor or horror-themed events. Conclusion. The ghoul, from its origins in Arabian lore to its widespread adaptation across cultures, remains a potent symbol of the macabre. It embodies human fears about death, the unknown, and the transformation from life to something beyond. As society evolves, so too does the myth of the ghoul, adapting to new fears and fascinations, ensuring its place in the dark corners of human storytelling. Whether seen as a literal creature or a metaphor for deeper existential dread, the ghoul continues to captivate and terrify, proving that some legends are timeless in their ability to resonate with the human psyche. The history and legend of the ghoul, vivid encounters with the macabre. Imagine the sun setting over the vast, desolate deserts of Arabia, where the sands whisper secrets of the ancients. Here among the dunes, the ghoul lurks, a creature from the legends of 1001 Nights. It's a being of shifting sands and shadows, embodying the very essence of the desert's treacherous beauty. This ghoul, known as Ghoul, appears at dusk, its form fluid, sometimes human, sometimes monstrous, with eyes that gleam like desert stars under the moonless night. It waits, patient as the eternal sands, for the unwary traveler to stray too far from the caravan's safety, to then devour them or feast on their corpse. A dance with death. In the tales, the ghoul is not just a consumer of flesh, but an artist of deception. It can mimic the voice of a loved one, luring victims with the promise of reunion, only for them to find themselves in the cold embrace of death. Its skin might be the color of the moon, pale and ghostly, or charred like the sands after a lightning strike, its nails long and curved, perfect for digging into graves. The ghoul's laughter, a chilling echo across the dunes, is said to be the last sound many hear, a macabre symphony that mixes with the desert winds. Through the ages, the ghoul in medieval and Islamic lore. As one travels through time to medieval Islamic texts, the ghoul's image becomes even more vivid. The Kitab al-Bulhan paints ghouls with grotesque features, elongated limbs, eyes that burn with the fire of hell, and mouths that never close, always hungry. They are depicted in gatherings of jinn, where they might dance around fires lit by the bones of their victims, their shadows stretching across walls like eerie puppets controlled by an unseen master. European terrors and Gothic horror. When these tales reached Europe, the ghoul found new life in Gothic horror. Imagine an English graveyard, shrouded in fog, where a figure resembling a ghoul emerges from the mist. Its eyes are hollow, its flesh decayed, yet it moves with a purpose, hungry, relentless. In Poe's world, the ghoul might be a tormented soul, its cries mingling with the howling wind, a creature of sorrow and rage. In Lovecraft's universe, it might dwell in forgotten catacombs beneath cities, a relic of a time when the earth was not so kind, its presence a reminder of our fleeting dominion over the darkness. Global echoes of the ghoul. Travel further to the vibrant yet haunting tales of Africa, where the Adze, a vampire-like creature, could transform into a firefly, its light a deceptive beacon in the night, leading to a feast of blood rather than the safety of home. In India, the Vetala might perch atop a corpse, its eyes glowing with an otherworldly knowledge, reciting riddles or tales that chill the spine. In Japan, Gaki roam the streets, their bodies emaciated to the point of transparency, condemned to hunger forever, their cries of torment piercing the tranquil night. Modern horrors. Ghouls in today's world. Now envision a modern city, Tokyo perhaps, where the ghoul of Tokyo Ghoul walks among humans, its true nature hidden beneath a mask of normalcy, until the hunger takes over and the mask falls, revealing a face with teeth sharp as knives, eyes red with desire. Or picture a post-apocalyptic world where ghouls, as in Fallout, are both victim and predator, their skin peeling away to reveal the tragedy of mutation, their voices hoarse from decades of screaming into the radioactive winds. A timeless terror. The ghoul, in all its forms, remains a vivid, visceral reminder of the thin line between life and death, between human and beast. It is the embodiment of decay and desire, a creature that mirrors our deepest fears of loss, isolation, and the unknown. With every retelling, its image becomes more grotesque, more compelling, ensuring that the ghoul will continue to haunt our collective imagination, as real as the shadows that dance on our walls at night. The ghoul in folklore, a journey through shadows and sands. The ghoul, a creature steeped in folklore, has fascinated and terrified across cultures, each adding its unique shade to the myth. Here's an exploration of how this entity has been woven into the tapestry of global folklore. Arabian origins. At the heart of ghoul lore lies the Arabian Peninsula, where the ghoul or ghoul first emerged from pre-Islamic tales. Here, the ghoul is not merely a monster, but a testament to the harshness of the desert environment. Picture a creature with the ability to shapeshift, taking on the guise of an animal or an alluring person to lure travelers into its deadly trap. Its lair is among the graves or in the depths of the desert, where it feasts on the dead or the lost. Its skin might be sand-colored, blending with its surroundings, its eyes reflecting the starkness of the desert night. This ghoul is a symbol of the unknown dangers that lurk where human civilization ends and the wilderness begins. Islamic folklore. With the advent of Islam, the ghoul found a new dimension in folklore. Islamic texts and scholars debated the nature of this beast, often associating it with jinn, beings of smokeless fire. In this context, The ghoul is depicted not only as a physical threat, but also as a spiritual one, capable of possessing or influencing humans. Imagine a gathering of jinn where the ghoul stands out with its grotesque appearance, perhaps with elongated fingers perfect for digging into the earth, its laughter a chilling echo in the night, warning of the fate of those who stray from the path of righteousness. European adaptations. As tales traveled, the ghoul was absorbed into European folklore, often merging with concepts of the undead like vampires or zombies. In this setting, the ghoul might be visualized in a graveyard under a full moon, its body decayed, yet animated by an insatiable hunger. Here, the ghoul could be a figure of tragedy, a soul cursed to roam, unable to find peace, its existence a reminder of human mortality and the fear of what lies beyond death. African echoes. In African folklore, entities akin to ghouls appear in various forms. Take, for example, the Ads from Ghanaian lore, which can transform into a firefly. This creature, while not a ghoul in name, shares the ghoul's traits of deception and consumption, glowing with an eerie light that attracts victims, only to feed on their blood or life essence. Its presence in stories serves as a cautionary tale against trusting appearances. Indian subcontinent. In India, the Vetala or Vetal shares thematic elements with ghouls. It inhabits corpses, animating them with its spirit, often depicted in stories where it engages in complex dialogues or riddles, embodying both horror and wisdom. The Vetala might be seen perched on a tree, its eyes glowing in the dark, a silent sentinel of the night, warning of the dangers of the afterlife. East Asian interpretations. In Japanese folklore, the gaki or preta are spirits akin to ghouls, eternally hungry due to their sins in life. These spirits might appear as emaciated figures, their hunger so great they consume anything, including human waste, in a never-ending cycle of torment. Here, the ghoul becomes a metaphor for greed and the consequences of one's actions. Creatures similar to ghouls in ancient Sumerian and Mesopotamian religion, Galus, also called Galas or Akkadian Galu, were great demons or devils of the ancient Mesopotamian underworld. Galu demons hauled unfortunate victims off to the underworld. They were one of 7 devils, or the offspring of hell, of Babylonian theology, that could be appeased by the sacrifice of a lamb at their altars. The goddess Inanna was pursued by Galu demons after being escorted from the underworld by Galatura and Coriara. In the descent, it is stated that said demons know no food, know no drink, eat no flower offering, drink no libation. They never enjoy the pleasures of marital embrace, never have any sweet children to kiss. They snatch the son from a man's knee. They make the bride leave the house of her father-in-law. The word Galu may also refer to a human adversary, one that is dangerous and implacable. Cultural synthesis. Across these cultures, the ghoul or its equivalents serve as a universal symbol of 1. Fear of the unknown, what lies in death, in the dark, or beyond the known world. 2. Moral lessons. Often, these creatures are used to teach about the dangers of greed, deceit, or straying from the path of virtue. 3. Human vulnerability. They remind us of our mortality, our physical frailties, and the thin veil between life and death. Modern resonance. While folklore has evolved, the ghoul persists, finding new life in modern narratives where it can represent societal fears, from the terror of consumerism to the dread of becoming other in a world that shuns difference. Each culture has painted the ghoul with its own brush, yet the core essence remains, a creature of both fascination and horror, a dark mirror to our own humanity. In folklore, the ghoul is not just a monster. It's a narrative device that explores human conditions, fears, and the eternal dance between light and darkness. Arabian ghoul lore, monsters of the desert sands. In the rich tapestry of Arabian folklore, the ghoul, known as Ghoul, stands out as a particularly eerie and enduring figure. Here's a deep dive into the lore surrounding this creature of shadow and sand. The nature of the ghoul. 1. Shapeshifter. The Arabian ghoul is renowned for its ability to transform. It can appear as an animal, often a hyena, or take on the guise of a human, especially one known to the victim to lure them into danger. This shape-shifting ability makes the ghoul a master of deception, embodying the unpredictability and harshness of the desert. 2. Habitat. Ghouls are said to dwell in desolate places, graveyards, abandoned ruins, or deep within the desert where travelers are scarce. These locations are not just their homes, but also their hunting grounds, where they can easily prey on the dead or the lost. 3. Diet. The ghoul is infamous for its diet of human flesh, particularly that of the dead. However, tales also speak of ghouls devouring travelers, either by direct attack or by leading them to their doom through trickery. Mythological origins. 1. Pre-Islamic roots. The ghoul has roots deep in pre-Islamic Arabian culture, where it was part of the oral storytelling tradition. These tales would often serve as cautionary narratives about the perils of traveling alone or straying from the known paths. 2. 1001 Nights. One of the most famous sources for ghoul stories is the collection of tales known as 1001 Nights, or Arabian Nights. Here, ghouls appear in stories like those of Sinbad, where they are depicted as monstrous beings that pose significant threats to travelers. Cultural significance. A moral tale. The ghoul often symbolizes the dangers of human vices like greed, deceit, or the folly of trusting appearances over reality. They are moral lessons wrapped in horror. Protection and warding. Various protective measures against ghouls are mentioned in folklore, including reciting verses from the Quran, which is believed to have power over jinn and thus ghouls. Certain amulets or talismans might also be used for protection against these creatures. Characteristics and behavior. 1. Appearance. While ghouls can shapeshift, when seen in their true form, they are often described with monstrous features, elongated limbs, sharp teeth, and eyes that glow with a malevolent light. Their skin might be sand-colored or dark, blending with the night. 2. Behavior. Ghouls are solitary or live in small groups, known for their cunning. They might mimic voices to lure people, or they could hide in plain sight, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Their laughter is said to echo across the desert, a sound of doom. Famous tales. 1. Ghoul of the Desert. There's a story of a ghoul that terrorized a caravan route, appearing at night to drag away travelers. Only through the cunning of one wise traveler who outwitted the ghoul by pretending to be dead was the creature finally defeated. 2. Ghoul mothers. Some tales speak of female ghouls who steal children or newly deceased bodies, raising them as part of their own brood. These stories emphasize the ghoul's connection to death and the afterlife. Modern interpretations. While the traditional lore remains strong, modern interpretations in literature, film, and video games have expanded the concept of the ghoul. They often retain the essence of the creature, a being of hunger and desolation, but are adapted to new contexts, exploring themes of isolation, survival, and the human condition. Conclusion. The Arabian ghoul is more than just a monster. It's a cultural emblem of the fear of the unknown, the dangers of the desert, and the moral landscape of Arab folklore. It serves as a reminder of the thin line between life and death, human and beast, in one of the world's most unforgiving environments. Through stories passed down through generations, the ghoul continues to haunt the imagination, a shadowy figure against the backdrop of the endless sands. Ghoul's diet specifics. In Arabian folklore, the diet of the ghoul or ghoul is characterized by a few specific and gruesome elements. Primary diet. 1. Human flesh. The ghoul is most notorious for its consumption of human flesh, particularly that of the dead. They are said to dig up graves in cemeteries to feast on corpses, which aligns with their association with death and decay. 2. Fresh victims. Beyond merely consuming the dead, ghouls are also known to hunt for fresh prey. They might lure travelers into traps or ambush them, using their shape-shifting abilities to deceive and capture humans. This aspect of their diet underscores their predatory nature, not just scavenging but actively hunting. Dietary habits. 1. Opportunistic feeding. Ghouls are opportunistic in their feeding habits. They are not particular about the condition of the flesh they consume, whether it's fresh from a recent kill or decayed from a long-buried body. This opportunistic nature makes them formidable and unpredictable. 2. Nocturnal activity. Their feeding is predominantly nocturnal, aligning with their preference for darkness and their association with the night. The cover of night not only provides them with concealment, but also plays into the fear they instill in humans. Cultural and symbolic significance. 1. Symbol of death. The ghoul's diet is deeply symbolic. Consuming the dead ties them to the cycle of life and death, making them a manifestation of death itself or a creature that exists on the border between the living and the dead. 2. Moral implications. The act of eating human flesh, especially of the dead, can be seen as a moral warning against desecrating the dead, against greed, consuming beyond one's need, and against straying into dangerous or forbidden areas where one might not return. Variations in lore. 1. Other substances. While human flesh is the primary diet, some stories might expand upon this, suggesting that ghouls eat anything they can find in their environment if human flesh is unavailable. This could include animal remains or even inedible substances out of desperation or their unnatural hunger. 2. Ghouls in different cultures. In adaptations or interpretations outside of Arabian folklore, the diet might include variations. For instance, in some modern narratives or games, ghouls might be depicted as needing to consume specific types of flesh or even energy, like in Tokyo Ghoul, where ghouls eat human flesh to survive, but also have a more complex relationship with their diet. Protective measures against ghouls. Given their diet, folklore also includes methods to protect against ghouls, such as 1. Burial practices. Ensuring bodies are buried deeply or with protective spells or amulets to prevent ghouls from accessing them. 2. Avoidance. Travelers are advised to avoid traveling at night, especially near known ghoul territories, or to travel in groups for safety. 3. Spiritual protection. Reciting prayers or verses from sacred texts, which are believed to ward off or repel ghouls due to their connection to jinn or other malevolent spirits. In essence, the ghoul's diet in Arabian lore is not just about sustenance, but is emblematic of the creature's role in the narrative of life, death, and the moral lessons embedded within folklore. More gruesome details. In the shadowy corners of Arabian lore, the ghoul's diet is depicted with a particular gruesomeness that underscores its monstrous nature. Here are some of the more chilling specifics. Gruesome feeding practices. 1. Feasting on corpses. Ghouls are said to dig into freshly buried bodies, sometimes even before the mourners have left the gravesite. They claw through the earth with their long, sharp nails, dragging out the corpses to feast upon in the moonlight. The act of desecrating graves adds a sacrilegious layer to their feeding, turning the sanctity of burial into a feast for the macabre. 2. Selective consumption. While they consume all parts of the body, tales often emphasize their preference for the most repulsive parts to human sensibility, organs that have begun to decay, or even the flesh that clings to bones long after death. This includes intestines, hearts, and eyes, which are sometimes described as still oozing with the last remnants of life. 3. The sound of consumption. Stories recount the sounds of ghouls eating, gnawing on bones, the tearing of flesh, and the slurp of bodily fluids. These sounds are said to echo through the night, a cacophony of horror that lingers in the graveyard. Horrific methods of capture. 1. Luring with voices. Ghouls mimic the voices of loved ones or friends lost in the desert, calling out for help or in distress. Those who rush to aid the voice fall into the ghoul's trap, where they are then torn apart with savage glee. 2. Ambush tactics. Ghouls might lay in wait, hidden in the sand or behind dunes, only to pounce on unsuspecting travelers. They could drag their prey into their lairs if not consumed on the spot, sometimes keeping victims alive for prolonged terror before the final gruesome meal. Physical traits enhancing their diet. 1. Distorted features. Their mouths are described with rows of jagged, sharp teeth, perfect for rending flesh from bone. Their jaws might unhinge like that of a serpent, allowing them to consume large chunks of meat in one go. 2. Claws for digging and tearing. Their hands are equipped with long, curved claws, not just for digging up graves, but for tearing through flesh and sinew with surgical precision. Aftermath and psychological horror. 1. Leaving signs. After feeding, ghouls might leave behind a scene of horror, strewn bones, bits of clothing, or personal items from their victims, as a grisly reminder to any who might stumble upon the aftermath. 2. Psychological impact. The very idea of ghouls devouring the dead instills a deep-seated fear of what happens after burial, of the sanctity of death being violated, and the potential for one's own body to become a ghoul's meal. Cultural echoes of their gruesomeness. 1. Warnings and tales. These details are often woven into cautionary tales to warn against traveling alone, especially at night, or to emphasize the importance of proper burial rites to protect the dead from ghoul predation. 2. Rituals for protection. The ghoul's horrifying diet has led to the creation of various protective rituals or spells meant to safeguard the dead, ensuring they are not disturbed by these creatures of the night. In Arabian folklore, the ghoul's diet is not just a matter of sustenance, but a vivid depiction of the horror that lurks beyond the light, where the line between life and death blurs into nightmare. Ghoul transformation methods. The transformation methods of ghouls in Arabian folklore are steeped in mystery, magic, and the supernatural, often involving elements of deception and the crossing of boundaries between the human and the monstrous. Here are some of the detailed methods by which a ghoul might transform or reveal its true nature. Shape-shifting. 1. Human to ghoul. Ghouls are not just creatures of horror, but also of cunning. They can transform into humans or mimic the appearance of someone known to the traveler to lure them closer. This transformation is often described as seamless, with the ghoul able to maintain the guise until it reveals its true form, usually when it's too late for the victim to escape. Method. The transformation might be triggered by the ghoul's will, a magical incantation, or simply by the approach of darkness. It's said that ghouls can change form at will, but they prefer night or shadowy places where their transformation is less likely to be interrupted. 2. Animal forms. Ghouls might transform into animals like hyenas, which are seen as scavengers of the dead, mirroring the ghoul's dietary habits. This transformation could be for practical reasons, such as to avoid detection or to approach prey without causing alarm. Method. This could involve a ritualistic chant or the use of dark magic. However, some stories suggest it's an innate ability, activated by the ghoul's desire or necessity. Revealing true form. 1. Moonlight exposure. In some tales, the true form of a ghoul is revealed under the light of the moon, especially during a full moon, which acts as a natural revealer of truth, stripping away the illusions cast by the ghoul. 2. Physical transformation. When feasting or when their true nature is provoked, ghouls might undergo a horrifying transformation. Their skin might peel back to reveal decayed flesh beneath, their limbs elongate, and their eyes might glow with an unnatural light. 3. Trigger. This could be triggered by the smell of blood or human fear, or simply when the ghoul decides it no longer needs to maintain its disguise. Magical or spiritual transformation. 1. Curse or sin. Some narratives suggest that ghouls were once human, transformed into their monstrous state due to a curse or as punishment for grave sins like cannibalism or desecrating the dead. This transformation might not be voluntary, but a consequence of their actions. Method. Here, the transformation might involve a ritual by a sorcerer or a divine judgment, turning the human into a ghoul after death or at the moment of their crime. 2. Possession. Ghouls could possess or animate corpses, giving them the ability to move and feed, essentially transforming the dead into ghouls. This is more of a spiritual transformation, where the soul or essence of a ghoul enters a dead body. Method. This could involve necromantic magic or a ghoul's innate ability to inhabit or control the dead, perhaps through a ritual or by merely being in close proximity to a corpse. Cultural variations. Modern interpretations. In contemporary media or adaptations, the transformation might involve more scientific explanations like radiation or genetic mutations, as seen in games like Fallout, or metaphysical changes due to consuming human flesh, as in Tokyo Ghoul, where one becomes more ghoul-like with each meal. Protective measures. Knowing of these transformations, folklore includes methods to counteract or reveal a ghoul's true form, like reciting certain prayers, using holy water, or carrying protective amulets. The transformation of ghouls in folklore thus serves not only as a plot device for horror, but also as a metaphor for the duality of nature, the thin veil between humanity and monstrosity, and the consequences of one's actions or the dangers of the unknown. Ritualistic chants. In Arabian folklore, the specifics of a ghoul's ritualistic chant for transformation or to invoke their powers are often left intentionally vague or varied, as these tales have been passed down through oral tradition, allowing for numerous interpretations and adaptations. However, we can infer some details based on the cultural context and elements common in Middle Eastern mythology. Nature of the chant. 1. Language. The chant would most likely be in Arabic, given the cultural setting. It might involve archaic or dialect-specific phrases not commonly used in everyday language, adding to the mystique and power of the chant. 2. Rhythm and melody. Chants often have a rhythmic pattern or melody, sometimes mimicking the natural sounds of the desert or night, like the wind through sand dunes or the howling of a jackal. This could be to resonate with the environment or to align with magical or spiritual forces. 3. Repetition. There would likely be repetition in the chant to build up magical energy or to focus the intent. Repetitive phrases are common in many magical traditions worldwide for their hypnotic and power-amplifying qualities. Possible elements of the chant. 1. Invocation of elements. The chant might invoke natural elements associated with the ghoul's habitat, like sand, darkness, or the night sky. Phrases could be something like, "By the sands that shift and hide, by the moon that guards the night." 2. Names or titles. Specific names or titles might be used to call upon the ghoul's nature or to summon their powers. This could include invoking names of ancient deities or spirits associated with death or the underworld in Arabian myth. Titles like Ghoul al-Qabr, meaning Ghoul of the Grave, or Sayyid al-Layl, meaning Master of the Night. 3. Curses or blessings. The chant might include elements of cursing to transform or to invoke the wrath necessary for shapeshifting, or blessings if they're calling upon protective spirits or dark patrons. For example, Curse of the Eternal Hunger, bless this form with shadows. 4. Rhyme and alliteration. To make the chant memorable and powerful, it could use rhyme or alliteration, common in poetry and spellcraft for their mnemonic and magical effects. For example, darkness deep, death's decree, ghoulish forms now come to be. Performance of the chant. 1. Location. The chant might need to be performed in a specific location like a graveyard, a deserted place, or at a particular spot in the desert known for supernatural happenings. 2. Time. Certain times might be more potent for the chant, such as during the night, at midnight, or under the light of a specific lunar phase like the new moon or full moon. 3. Physical actions. The chant could be accompanied by specific movements or actions, like digging into the earth, circling an area, or making gestures that symbolize transformation or death. Perhaps drawing a circle in the sand to signify the boundary between the human world and the ghoul's domain. 4. Accompaniments. The chant might be enhanced with other elements like burning incense of a particular type, using bones or symbols as focal points, or even drawing on the ground with blood or sand. Protective counterchants. In folklore, there would also be counterchants or prayers known to counteract these spells, often involving verses from the Quran or invocations of protective spirits or angels. Remember, these details are speculative based on folklore patterns, since exact words or methods are not commonly detailed in traditional stories. Each storyteller might have introduced their own version, making the chant unique to the tale or the culture's regional nuances. Specific ghoul chants. Specific words or phrases for a ghoul's ritualistic chant from Arabian folklore are not well documented in historical texts, as these chants would largely be part of oral tradition or personal storytelling variations. However, based on the cultural context, here's a speculative chant in Arabic, designed to evoke the themes and atmosphere associated with ghouls. Arabic chant.
Bismillahili al-Muqtarib, Baburundi dia, al-Kamari al-Munae, Ui al-Jizam al-Mutafin, Baugayiru al-Shakla al-Bashari, Burundi Kubwati al-Jini al-Mukfiya, Baburundi Nafaz al-Mauti al-Kadim, Ukfi al-Akakata fi al-Zulumat, Bautiru Mini al-Ghul al-Muribe.
English translation. By the power of the wandering night, and by the light of the illuminating moon, I revive the decaying body, and alter the human form. With the hidden strength of the jinn, and with the breath of the coming death, I conceal the truth in darkness, and reveal for me the terrifying ghoul. Notes on the chant. 1. Invocation of night and moon. The chant invokes the night and the moon, elements closely tied to the ghoul's domain. 2. Transformation. It speaks of reviving decay and changing human form, central to the ghoul's nature. 3. Jinn and death. The mention of jinn, a class of spirits in Islamic mythology, and death, ties into the supernatural aspect of ghouls. 4. Concealment and revelation. The chant aims to hide the truth, humanity, in darkness and reveal the ghoul, emphasizing the duality of their existence. Please note, this chant is entirely speculative, crafted based on the thematic elements of ghoul lore and the structure typical of Arabic incantations or poetry. Actual chants from folklore would have varied significantly across different regions, storytellers, and times, with many possibly lost to time or kept secret within cultural practices. Ghoul transformation rituals. In Arabian folklore, while there aren't explicit, widely documented rituals for ghoul transformation due to the oral nature of these tales, we can infer and construct potential rituals based on common themes and motifs in Middle Eastern mythology and magic. Here are some speculative rituals that might be associated with ghoul transformation. Preparation for the ritual. 1. Time. The ritual would likely be conducted during the night, especially at times when the boundary between the living and the dead is considered thin, like midnight or during a new moon, symbolizing the transition from life to death or human to ghoul. 2. Location: a graveyard, an abandoned place, or deep in the desert, where the ghoul is said to reside or where human interference is minimal. These locations are imbued with the essence of death or isolation, crucial for transformation. 3. Gathering materials: A. Human remains, bones, hair, or other parts from a corpse might be used to symbolize or invoke the connection to death. B. Sand. Given the desert setting, sand could be used to draw symbols or circles, representing the earth and the ghoul's environment. C. Blood. Either from an animal or, in darker tales, human blood, for its life-giving and life-taking properties. The ritualistic process. 1. Cleansing and preparation. The participant might cleanse themselves with sand or water from a specific source, symbolically washing away their human identity. Wearing dark or no clothing, to blend with the night or to symbolize death. 2. Drawing the circle or symbols. Using sand, blood, or even the dust from a grave, one might draw a circle or specific symbols. This could symbolize the boundary between the human world and the ghoul's realm or contain the magical energies. 3. Chanting or invocation. Reciting a chant or prayer in Arabic, possibly like the one mentioned earlier, invoking darkness, the night, the moon, and the essence of death or jinn. This chant would be repeated to build up magical energy. 4. Offerings or sacrifices. An offering could be made, perhaps food for the dead or an animal sacrifice, symbolizing the ghoul's hunger for flesh. This act could be seen as a pact with darker forces or a physical manifestation of the ghoul's nature. 5. Physical transformation actions. The individual might mimic the actions of a ghoul, digging into the earth to symbolize grave robbing, or consuming something symbolic of human flesh, like raw meat or a specially prepared substance. 6. Summoning or self-transformation. Here, the participant might either call upon a ghoul to possess them or invoke a curse upon themselves to become a ghoul. This could involve invoking names of known ghouls from lore or dark spirits, using mirrors or reflective surfaces at night to capture one's soul or to reflect a new form. 7. Sealing the transformation. The ritual might end with a final act, like burying oneself in sand symbolically, emerging as changed, or with a binding of some sort, like tying knots in a rope or cloth to signify the binding of their new nature. Aftermath. 1. Recognition. The transformed individual might then be recognized by other ghouls, spirits, or through changes in their physical appearance or behavior. 2. Protection or countermeasures. In folklore, there would be known methods to reverse or protect against such transformations, often involving religious or spiritual practices like prayer, holy water, or the recitation of sacred texts. Please remember, these descriptions are speculative and based on the thematic elements of Arabian folklore. Specific rituals would have varied widely, with each region or storyteller potentially adding their unique elements. Specific ghoul transformation chants. Here are some speculative chants for ghoul transformation, crafted to evoke the essence of Arabian folklore while respecting the mystical and supernatural nature of ghouls. Arabic chant for invoking transformation.
بسم الله المسلم وبالأمر المستنير وويل نفسي لغول بحقي الموت واليني المكفي كفلت بالمفتي والحياتي أصبه الجسم بالمفتا وأغير الروح للتاما وأشو بالظلم الدومن. English translation. By the darkened night, and by the moon that lights, I transform myself into a ghoul, by the right of the dead and the hidden jinn. I speak with death and life, I liken the body to the dead, and I change the soul to darkness, and I live in the shadows forever. Arabic chant for binding the ghoul form. بالكفاتي المكفية لي الغول وبتسهada al-shakla bial-layli, bial-dami wa al-ramli wa al-kabri.
Ukahtimu nafsi bial-zulumat. English translation. With the hidden power of the ghoul, I bind this form to the night. With blood, sand, and grave, I seal myself in darkness. Notes. 1. Chant structure. These chants use repetitive structures, which are common in magical incantations for their hypnotic and empowering effects. 2. Elements used. They invoke night, the moon, death, and the supernatural jinn, all of which are emblematic in the context of ghoul transformation. 3. Symbolism. The use of blood, sand, and grave symbolizes the physical and spiritual elements that a ghoul embodies or interacts with. 4. Purpose. The first chant focuses on initiating the transformation, while the second is about locking in or binding the new ghoul form to the individual's soul or essence. These chants are purely imaginative, designed to fit within the thematic framework of Arabian ghoul lore. Actual transformation rituals or chants would vary greatly based on storyteller, cultural nuances, and regional beliefs. The Ghoul according to H.P. Lovecraft. H.P. Lovecraft, known for his cosmic horror and the creation of the Cthulhu mythos, did not extensively focus on ghouls in the same way he did on other mythos creatures like the Great Old Ones. However, ghouls do appear in his works, particularly in stories like Pickman's Model and The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadith. Here's how Lovecraft portrayed ghouls. Physical description. 1. Appearance. Lovecraft's ghouls are described as having somewhat humanoid forms, but with distinctly monstrous features. They are depicted with elongated limbs, sharp claws, and grotesque faces with canine features, wide mouths filled with sharp teeth, and sometimes they are noted to have a dog-like or hyena-like appearance, echoing their traditional lore as corpse eaters. 2. Skin. Their skin is often described as having a pale, decayed look, sometimes covered in patches of fur, or being leathery and tough. This texture implies a connection with the earth and the dead, fitting their subterranean and necrophagous lifestyle. Behavior and society. 1. Habitat. Lovecraft places his ghouls in underground tunnels, ancient ruins, or beneath graveyards, maintaining the lore of them dwelling near or among the dead. In the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadith, they are encountered in the dream world, particularly in the underworld. 2. Language and communication. They have their own language, described as guttural and difficult for humans to mimic or understand, which adds to their alien nature. 3. Diet. True to folklore, Lovecraft's ghouls are necrophagous, feasting on the dead. However, they are not just mindless predators. They have a society, suggesting a level of intelligence not always attributed to traditional ghouls. 4. Society. In Lovecraft's universe, ghouls have a complex social structure. In the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadith, they are shown to have leaders, engage in trade with other creatures of the Dreamlands, and even have the capacity for friendship or loyalty, as seen with Randolph Carter, who befriends them. Cultural and mythological role. 1. Connection to human. Lovecraft's ghouls have a curious connection to humanity. They are sometimes implied to be transformed humans or humans who have sunk into a state of bestiality or have been cursed. This adds a layer of psychological horror, suggesting that the ghoul might be an evolutionary or moral regression. 2. Fear of decay. Their existence underscores Lovecraft's themes of decay, the fear of death, and the horror of the unknown or the transformation into something less than human. 3. Mythos integration. While not central to the Cthulhu mythos, ghouls fit into Lovecraft's world where the boundaries between reality, dream, and nightmare blur. They serve as one of the many lesser horrors that exist alongside the cosmic entities, representing a more tangible, yet still terrifying, aspect of his universe. Notable appearances. 1. Pickman's model. Here, ghouls are central to the story's horror. The painter Richard Upton Pickman is revealed to have a fascination or perhaps even a kinship with them, painting them in disturbingly realistic detail, hinting at his own descent into darkness or transformation. 2. The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. Ghouls are allies to Randolph Carter on his quest, showing their more nuanced role in the dream world. They are depicted with a certain nobility and intelligence, contrasting with their more monstrous physical appearance. In Lovecraft's hands, ghouls transcend mere folklore monsters to become a part of his larger exploration of the macabre, the grotesque, and the existential horror of human insignificance in a vast, uncaring universe. Wikipedia article on the ghoul. In folklore, a ghoul, from Arabic ghoul, is a demon-like being or monstrous humanoid, often associated with graveyards and the consumption of human flesh. In the legends or tales in which they appear, a ghoul is far more ill-mannered and foul than goblins. The concept of the ghoul originated in pre-Islamic Arabian religion. Modern fiction often uses the term to label a specific kind of monster. By extension, the word ghoul is also used in a derogatory sense to refer to a person who delights in the macabre or whose occupation directly involves death, such as a gravedigger or grave robber. Etymology. The English word ghoul is from the Arabic ghul, from gala, to seize. The term was first used in English literature in 1786 in William Beckford's Orientalist novel Vathek, which describes the ghoul of Arabic folklore. This definition of the ghoul has persisted into modern times, with ghouls appearing in popular culture. Folklore. In Arabic folklore, the ghoul is said to dwell in cemeteries and other uninhabited places. A male ghoul is referred to as ghoul, while the female is called ghulla. Scholar Dwight F. Reynolds identifies the Arabic ghoul as a female creature, sometimes called mother ghoul, ghulla, our aunt ghoul, or a similar relational term, in tales told to girls and young women. In these tales, the ghoul appears to men as a long-lost female relative or an unassuming old woman. She uses this glamour to lure the hapless characters, who are usually husbands or fathers, into her home, where she can eat them. The male character's female relatives can often see through the illusion and warn them of the danger. The men survive if they believe the women, and are eaten if they do not. The ghoul is said to lure unwary people into the desert wastes or abandoned places to slay and devour them. The creature also preys on young children, drinks blood, steals coins, and eats the dead, then taking the form of the person most recently eaten. One of the narratives identified a ghoul named Ghuli Bayaban, a particularly monstrous character believed to be inhabiting the wilderness of Afghanistan and Iran. A hyena who attacked a woman in Mecca in 1667 was referred to by locals as a ghoul, possibly due to a perceived similarity to the creature of folklore. Al-Dimashqi describes the ghoul as cave-dwelling animals who only leave at night and avoid the light of the sun. They would eat both humans and animals. In a Syrian folktale, The Woodcutter's Wealthy Sister, which was adapted into an animated story in the series Britannica's Tales Around the World, a poor, arrogant, and spiteful woodcutter encounters a beautiful, wealthy princess who claims to be his long-lost sister, even though he had no sisters at all. The woodcutter accepts the mysterious princess's invitation to bring him, his abused wife, and their numerous children to her palace to live in luxury. However, the wife discovers that the princess is in fact a female ghoul, simply referred to as a monster in the Britannica adaptation, who is planning to eat the woodcutter and his family. After narrowly escaping the ghoul's attempts to eat them, the wife and her children flee the palace in the night and leave the woodcutter to be devoured by the ghoul. It was not until Antoine Galland translated 1001 Nights into French that the Western concept of ghouls was introduced into European society. Galland depicted the ghoul as a monstrous creature that dwelled in cemeteries, feasting upon corpses. Similar creatures. In ancient Mesopotamia, There were demonic entities known as Galu, which scholar Ahmed al-Rawi believes may have influenced the Arabic ghoul via early contact between Bedouin traders and Akkadians. The Galu was an Akkadian underworld demon, associated with the stories of Dumuzid and Inanna. In Islam, ghouls are not mentioned in the Quran, but in Hadith. Exegetes of the Quran, tafsir, conjectured that the ghouls might be burned jinn or devils. Accordingly, the jinn and shayatin devils once had access to the heavens, where they eavesdropped and returned to earth to pass hidden knowledge to the soothsayers. When Jesus was born, 3 heavenly spheres were forbidden to them. With the arrival of Muhammad, the other 4 were forbidden. The merid among the shayatin continued to rise to the heavens, but were burned by comets. If these comets didn't burn them to death, they were deformed and driven to insanity. They then fell to the deserts and were doomed to roam the earth as ghouls. In one hadith it is said, lonely travelers can escape a ghoul's attack by repeating the adhan, call to prayer. When reciting the throne verse, a ghoul, in contrast to a devil, might decide to convert to Islam. The ghoul could appear in male and female shape, but usually appeared female to lure male travelers to devour them. Al-Masudi reports that on his journey to Syria, Umar slew a ghoul with his sword. According to History of the Prophets and Kings, the rebellious Maradadahum among the devils and the ghouls have been chased away to the deserts and mountains and valleys a long time ago. A ghoul is said to have stolen dates from the house of Abu Ayyub al-Ansari. When she was caught, she told him that reciting Ayat al-Kursi will protect his house from devils and other misfortune. In return for this information, he released her. Muhammad told him that the ghoul spoke the truth, although she is a liar. Other Muslim scholars, like Abi al-Sheikh al-Asbahani, described the ghoul as a kind of female jinn that was able to change its shape and appear to travelers in the wilderness to delude and harm. Modern ghoul. The word ghoul entered the English tradition and was further identified as a grave-robbing creature that feeds on dead bodies and children. In the West, ghouls have no specific shape and have been described by Edgar Allan Poe as neither man nor woman, neither brute nor human. In Pickman's Model, a short story by H.P. Lovecraft, ghouls are members of a subterranean race. Their diet of dead human flesh mutated them into bestial humanoids able to carry on intelligent conversations with the living. The story has ghouls set underground with ghoul tunnels that connect ancient human ruins with deep underworlds. Lovecraft hints that the ghouls emerge in subway tunnels to feed on train wreck victims. Lovecraft's vision of the ghoul, shared by associated authors Clark Ashton Smith and Robert E. Howard, has heavily influenced the collective idea of the ghoul in American culture. Ghouls as described by Lovecraft are dog-faced and hideous creatures, but not necessarily malicious. Though their primary, perhaps only food source is human flesh, they do not seek out or hunt living people. They are able to travel back and forth through the wall of sleep. This is demonstrated in Lovecraft's The Dream Quest of Unknown Kadith, in which Randolph Carter encounters Pickman in the dream world after his complete transition into a mature ghoul. Ghouls in this vein are also changelings in the traditional way. The ghoul parent abducts a human infant and replaces it with one of its own. Ghouls appear entirely human as children, but begin to take on the ghoulish appearance as they age past adulthood. The fate of the replaced human children is not entirely clear, but Pickman offers a clue in the form of a painting depicting mature ghouls as they encourage a human child while it cannibalizes a corpse. This version of the ghoul appears in stories by authors such as Neil Gaiman, Brian Lumley, and Guillermo del Toro. Notes. Earlier etymologies have also suggested the word ghoul comes from an Arabic word meaning to kill. Scholar Ahmed al-Rawi writes, Abu al-Fayl ibn Manar, 1232 to 1311 AD. In Lisan al-Arab, states that the term ghoul stems from a verbal root gal meaning to kill, and Al-Abad mentions in al-Mu'ayfil Lugha that the term ghoul means death, as it is originally derived from the Arabic verb idol, which means to murder.